Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Garage Gym Experiment podcast. I'm Jake, and this is our second roundtable with this group. So who do we have? We have Mike from Gainz, Dylan, AbMat, Steve, Kleva Built, and then Jason, Surplus Strength. It just so happens to be Jason's 40th birthday, right?
Oh, happy birthday, man.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Yes, happy birthday. So here's how it's going to work. We have 4 different discussion topics. I will simply state them and then let the group go to work. So number 1, let's just dive right into it. What's your favorite part about working in the fitness industry?
People. I think for me personally, it's especially in the home gym community, it's the people and the amount of passion that they put behind it, and getting to help people to their next goal. That's the best part of it.
I seem to have an ability to talk myself out of almost anything. I wasn't able to do that with this career path. This is an industry that we make money off of providing convenience and ways to make people's lives happier, healthier, and more convenient in a way that promotes humanity as a whole. We're not making money off of other people's inconveniences or misfortunes. We're not executing arbitrage off of somebody else's accomplishments. We get to make things that promote humanity. There's nothing wrong with that. And being able to do what we do and represent, innovators and American-made quality and American jobs. I can't find anything wrong with what we do. I can find issues with a lot of different professions out there from my own moral standpoints, but I love what this industry represents, personally.
Yeah, I agree. I have a pretty extensive fitness background in regards to outside of the the equipment development, and that's what I fell into coming from fitness. But I used to do a lot of online coaching, and what I ended up enjoying the most was not helping competitors, and that's actually what I was the category I was in, like competing. I ended up preferring to help like the general public, because I got more satisfaction out of helping somebody have like a mentally sane approach or more sustainable approach to their health and dieting and all that, instead of the extremism that you see out there where people are going, they have to go 110% every time. And I've always liked the whole this method, just focus on the things that matter. Don't do more work than is required that won't generate any results. And I always loved the response I got from people where they saw the light and they're like, wow, like this is sustainable and I'm enjoying myself. I'm looking better and all that. So in regards to the fitness industry, that's a tie I have that I really enjoy. And then also obviously the current product development, which is just something I naturally love and enjoy and I'm pretty good at.
I'm with Steve on that as well. The product development stuff is awesome. That's probably the best part about the fitness industry is it like changes every day. Like in the last 5 years of just running Gainz, there's been, I don't even know, countless new products that have come out that people never thought they needed. Dumbbell plates for us, or a Genesis jack, or things like that. I mean, it's like constant innovation, and there's enough like abundance for everyone. So all of us can be on this call and come up with different products, and we can all still run a successful business. And that is something that's really, I think, unique to the fitness industry. And then I train myself, barbell lifting, and obviously the health side of it is really important. People that strength train and things like that, it's great to support them, help them break plateaus, help them lift safely and things like that. So I think that's why I like it the most.
Steve, I had a lunch the other day with a guy named Corey Davis, the guy who created the Forge Roller, and he said something very similar. He's been a coach and a trainer in his own gyms, and he gets more satisfaction off of, somebody coming into his gym, working out for 3 or 4 weeks and being able to do their first pull-up than training elite athletes who had their best season in competition. There's something a lot more rewarding. Not only you could see it on the face of the major impact that you've had on that person with a 3 to 4 week period, but I get that too. With the products that we make, we sell to elite athletes, but we're not focused around selling to elite athletes. We're more of average Joes than Globo Gym. We sell to the common people who have common problems and have issues and small issues that, niche issues in the everyday gym experience.
Was there a memo sent out that we should all wear black shirts? Because I just noticed that.
Do you own anything else?
I'm
not sure I do.
I actually made a point not to wear my flannel this time.
Oh.
I've worn a red flannel on like the last 4 podcasts I've been on.
All right. How about the biggest pet peeve of the fitness industry that you have?
Probably the people that are only in it for the money. It's very obvious, and it's the quicker, easier route that a lot of people choose to take. It's frustrating to see, just like to say someone copying your product. A lot of people understand how much time and energy and money goes into something like that, especially for a smaller company that doesn't have the resources of a larger company. And then, someone comes by that has enough resources to replicate something, which is way easier than, developing, obviously. And that's where I have an issue, because a lot of people will say, well, they're offering a cheaper alternative that's better for the consumer. But I think what they don't understand is they're cheating the person that invested all that time and energy into developing it. And they're essentially piggybacking and replicating what they're doing, repurposing it, and then marketing it as their own, which essentially dilutes the market too, because then they're now offering a cheaper version of what you offered, which appeals to more people. Obviously, people look at cost as one of the number one things. And then when you're looking at it online, it's very hard to distinguish the difference in quality. So what happens is people purchase the knockoffs, they're unhappy with it. And then now there's this precedent set where it's okay, it's who's the cheapest, who can get away with, and out of that part, just it feels like a lazy way to approach a business.
It also takes the integrity out of just what we're all trying to do here. I think that's why you guys are able to sit here on a podcast and be very amicable with each other, because there's a level of integrity. When there's people like Steve mentioned, it just removes that.
I would almost take that further, and there's a certain amount of ego that comes along with being a human. And I think because of the industry, some people that are into physique or into powerlifting or whatever it is that are at the pinnacle of these goals or get so tied up into it, like Steve was talking about in the extreme part of it, that they lose sight of humanity, in general. And it leads people to do things that aren't necessarily the right thing to do, and definitely not for the right reasons. Because like Steve said, at the end of the day, everybody's going to realize what a knockoff is. And it's just that, it's a knockoff. And so I think for me, the ego part that we see is people coming outside themselves and being so involved in something that's not actually them that they lose sight, and they're not kind to people, and they go, out of their way to do things that just aren't in line with helping others,
Mm-hmm.
And I think in this industry, we have such an awesome opportunity, and in the world of fitness in general, not just people in the industry, to help others. Like when you see somebody at the gym that's struggling, or maybe doesn't look like they've been going to the gym for 20 years, you have a chance to encourage that person and tell them that they have an opportunity to be great, just like you did when you started. And if you're not taking that opportunity, you're really missing the full benefit that you could get otherwise. So I think that ego part is my pet peeve. And I get a lot of emails where I want to be like, look, mother, and I'm just like, no, I'm going to write this email. I'm going to come back to it. And I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that that's not how they really wanted to approach this situation.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to come back personally and just know that they're dealing with something that I don't know about. And it takes all my effort not to lash back at some people sometimes, because it is really frustrating.
That's challenging for sure. I'd say my biggest pet peeve is also the ego, or the toxicity in the weightlifting fitness industry, where everybody thinks they're doing the right thing. And then if you're not following that program, that, they think that you're an idiot or a loser, they're going to call you out. Or if you're using a product that they don't like, they're going to definitely leave a comment and tell you why it's terrible. We just put up a TikTok yesterday using the plate snacks that we just started to collab with, and on our fractional plates. So the very first comment on it was, fractional plates are so pointless. You're scamming people. I mean, immediately, without obviously buying it, without understanding that, I'm not the only company that sells fractional plates. I mean, tons of companies sell fractional plates, but it's the immediate snap judgment. And then of course, that negativity breeds more negativity. And I think that is the worst part about the fitness industry. The negativity, it can be massive. And sometimes that outweighs all the positive comments and feedback and stuff that you get. Obviously, going back to what Steve said, especially with the making of the products, I can very much relate to that we have now experienced maybe one or two knockoffs of our dumbbell plate already. Something that I worked 5 years on, and it was 3 months later, a product shows up. So that's really tough. You want to say, hey, just come up with your own idea or something like that. So that can be really tough. And I think it's just, I guess it's part of the business and something you have to navigate. TikTok might not be the best platform for positivity. I'm sure everyone that's ever flipped through a TikTok video can see that. You know, on my Instagram, I won't have any negative comments because it's like a group that's catered that already likes our stuff, where something like that goes organic and then people just start making massive snap judgments on things and why this wouldn't work and this is a terrible product. And you know, they don't think about the human element, that like, I'm not the product, like I'm just actual human behind micro gains. Like I want to say, like, we get dehumanized sometimes where they don't realize, like, I run a business full time, I have a family and a wife and kids that see the comments, like it's not just the product. So I think the toxicity can be a lot.
My biggest pet peeve in the fitness industry is over marketing. I hate it when people will come out with this product and it's a great solution for one thing or another, but then, you know, they try to build, there's a big difference between a business and a product. And some people will try to build a business off of a single product, which it's very rarely possible, but they'll over market a product and show a million things that you can do with it when it's really only good at one of them. And I think it kind of just dilutes their product and their efforts. In terms of the ego side of things, and people coming out and producing products, you know, and stealing them from somebody like you or I just to make some money, like Steve said, it's tough. One of the things that we've been doing to combat it is attaching a face and a name and you know, a backstory to some of our products now as we release them. So if you see some of our newer products and some of our newer innovations, I have the copy written by the inventor. It starts with, "Hi, my name is this." The first thing that you see when you start exploring that product, whether you're a person or another brand that's looking to poach, is a human element that connects you to the person behind the product. Because I think it's a little harder to knock off a person, especially if you know that person or have some type of familiarity with them, than it is just to take the, you know, knock off a faceless product, which the ego is put aside once you put kind of a little human element to it.
Well, I think like Mike said too, is like we have families just like everyone else. And I think a lot of people, once they see like a logo or a business name, they automatically just lose sight of the size of the business. And they could think, well, this is probably a corporation, they have tons of people. So they generally treat things differently as opposed to like, hey, this is an actual person trying to start a business. And they're almost in the same place that that person would be. So like we've had some email interactions with people where I guess the attitude towards the situation is something that I could relate to. Someone says like, "Oh, your shipping's outrageous. Amazon's free." It's like, well, nobody can compete with that, especially a smaller business. So that's where it's tough, is we do everything we can to help minimize that kind of damage. But I think some people just lose sight of what reality is in regards to, okay, this business is still just a person running a business and not Amazon, that they have an infrastructure and ties with USPS and all that stuff where they're just sending stuff for free and also like warranting it with no question and that kind of thing.
You got a little, you're shipping light products. I'm shipping giant blocks of foam.
I don't understand. Like I give it to Jason and all the guys that do racks and stuff, because our stuff I've designed specifically to be small, light, for a few reasons. The shipping is cheaper, which usually is an incentive for the person to buy the product, because if it's the shipping is the cost of the product, you know, no one's going to justify that. But also just space wise, I'm picking up 500 jacks today. They were cut and it fits on a pallet that's maybe a foot high, you know, and all these boxes, you know what I mean? And so I always try to cater around. I try to cater around my limitations and stuff like that. So yeah, the shipping definitely is a challenge when it comes to, especially as a smaller business starting out, because you don't have all those incentives that you can compete with the big companies.
I get it, man. I wish I was.
In contrast, I received 250 tubes for UPSs yesterday, and they came on 5 pallets.
Jeez, that's crazy. We need to all just invest in some sort of transport company, one semi truck.
One driver nationwide.
Yeah.
One driver. Maybe we could all do the same
delivery.
All right, that was some really good insights. Let's move on to a different topic. So DIY projects are undoubtedly part of the home gym culture. However, they can be controversial at times. So what are your thoughts when you see something like a YouTube video copying your product? In addition, if you have any like additional thoughts for some sort of DIY product producer as they go about doing projects for the home gym community within the DIY realm?
I have mixed feelings on that because obviously, the do-it-yourself crowd is big, and a lot of people not only want to save the money, but they want to make something themselves. I think it's fine until it gets to a point of where just say the person's really marketing it as a way to essentially replace that person's product, because they're taking all of the development and all of the work that was put into it, and replicating something is way easier than doing that. So I'm kind of down the middle on that because I understand why people want to do that. Not everyone can afford premium products and they want to have their cake and eat it too. But, obviously it does hurt the other companies too. I know Jason can speak on this because recently we talked about a guy who essentially did the same exact thing with his and said, hey, I saw this, it's great. So now I'm going to show you how to make one, which not everyone has the access and resources to, but still the people that do, you're doing what I was just discussing,
I guess it's a good time for me to chime in. There's a graduated scale to these things. And I think there's a few key points with what I would consider DIY. Because honestly, like the UPS, a lot of people would say it started out as a DIY. But honestly, when I was playing with my spudding pulleys and playing with the 2-pulley system, that was DIY. When I spent 27, 30, 40 hours on the very first prototype, that's when it went a little beyond. And referencing the video that just came out where somebody was like, hey, I didn't want to spend $500 on the UPS setup shipped to my house. It wasn't that he couldn't afford it or that my product is astronomically priced. It is a high priced item, but I don't think it's out of people's reach. And he just didn't want to spend the money. It wasn't like he was coming up with something novel. It was a direct copy. I probably would have been more upset if he had shown how to make it and it was like something that everybody could do with pieces out of their kitchen. But I think what he ended up finding out is that it cost him 8 hours of his time and almost $300 in raw materials. And it still didn't have any UHMW. The cables sucked. The pulleys weren't the same. It wasn't the same. But it got the job done for him. But I think what he found out is he probably would have been better off just buying it from me. And so I think when you have a solution that you need in your gym and you need to get it done and you can't afford the high-end solution and you make it for yourself, fuck yeah, do it all day. I love it. You can't afford a GHD, make one out of wood that you got laying around. You got scrap and you need to get the job done. I am all for that because I've done it in my own home gym. I've been a home gym owner for a long time. And there's plenty of stuff I have DIY'd in here. Typically, I will end up buying the other product after my DIY has served its purpose and I've saved enough money to buy that product. So when someone puts a DIY instructional that is an exact copy of a product that's already on the market, that's a big middle finger. If you're coming up with a solution that's kind of like, this is my solution, not a direct copy of someone else's solution to the same problem, that's when I celebrate DIY. I think if you are going to copy someone's product, you need to give them proper notice and you need to do it in the right way. And you need to give them credit for their design because that intellectual property, even though you've copied it, definitely doesn't belong to you. So for anyone trying to do DIY, I want to encourage that. That's where we get innovation from. But I also want people to know there's a fine line there, and you just need to respect people's intellectual property because, like Steve said, or Mike, he spent 5 years on that dumbbell plate. That's a long time in someone's life, and you don't know how many sleepless nights or how many vendors he's had to go through or how many iterations of that product, and it's just a lot when you see all the way through that and how many road bumps you've overcome and all these things to get to this product. And then someone's like, oh, he got all the hard stuff worked out. Now I'll just copy this finished product and I'll have my own. So yeah, it's a fine line, but I think there's a lot of innovation in the DIY space. And honestly, I follow all the guys at DIY. I love seeing that. In my particular case, the guy that just did the YouTube video, I didn't pay it much mind, mostly because he doesn't have that big a following and it wasn't like a huge deal for me. But when Koreans copied my product, 2 months after releasing it, that was really scary because they had pallets and pallets of these and they were selling them. I think that's the danger that a lot of us are used to if we follow Donnie Thompson and, his ideas that he feels like may have been stolen or he's taken advantage of. And I think we're all protective of that because this is how I feed my family. You know, we've invested a lot into surplus strength. I'm sure Steve, Sierra, y'all feel the same. Mike, I mean, everybody on this call, you know, we're well invested into our business and we take our customer service seriously and we treat our customers with a certain level of respect and everything. And so we kind of expect to get the same from the community that we like to support.
I think Dylan made an interesting point earlier when he said some people are building businesses and some people are just building a product. And I think that matters in the DIY space. So for me, micro Gainz weight plates can be replicated by buying 2-inch washers from like McMaster car. People do that. My deadlift jack we make out of wood, people can cut it. People can cut out a piece of wood if they wanted to. People have done that. Our dumbbell plates, instead of like clamping it on, some people like use those big bands and wrap it around a dumbbell with like a plate on the end, trying to add incremental weight. So I've seen so many DIY things, but I don't know if it's ever really negatively impacted our business because I don't know if any of the accounts are big enough that people are going to come in. And I think Jason, or you mentioned it was like $300 in 8 hours to build a comparable product. Like we all sell convenience. And it's the convenience of like, sure, you can buy washers at McMaster car and, you know, write your logo or stamp them in there. And that'll cost you $24 for 8 of them. Or you can buy the micro Gainz ones that are calibrated. They're guaranteed. They're made in the USA. We can ship them to you for $40. It doesn't seem like it's that much more, I guess. I guess I'm not really affected by too much by them for that point. I think they do a great job. I think they come up with interesting stuff. I'm saying like a great point Jason made too was like, I've come up with a lot of DIY stuff myself. And I do also go and get like the brand name thing eventually. And I think it's important to support that. But yeah, I don't know. I know it's a big space, but maybe not as big as people consider. Like everyone's going to flock to a certain DIYer and now they're all going to make a deadlift jack like mine. And I'm going to lose all my business from it. Because like they like convenience almost over everything. So that's my take.
One of my favorite comments that I get on some of my products once we release them is, I can make it for less than that.
Oh my God. All the time.
That's
$2. The entire capitalistic world was built on the principle somebody made that for less than they sold it to you for. That's what I do here. I do it 50,000 times a year if I can. You know, I always think it's funny. Yes, you can make things less than for what some people sell them for, but like Mike said, we don't just sell products, we sell convenience. When I develop a product, it follows this list in descending order: functionality, convenience, durability, price, then aesthetic. You know, we sold something that was functional, that you can make something functional, whether it was convenient, whether it was durable, whether it was price conscious, or whether it looked pretty. That's all what makes a product up. You know, so the DIY community is kind of cool. I like it because it shows the innovation and kind of shows for me particularly, a lot of the people in the DIY community will create a product to solve a problem that has not yet been solved. So for me, I got to pay very close attention to it and the community, because there could be something more convenient that can come out of one of these little DIY projects. Also, the build out is somehow how I derive my price points. You know, for some of my products, I try to determine how much it would cost me to build one. And then I take my time, calculate that into it. And then that's my retail price point. You know, so no one's going to argue with, you know, paying some $50 for something when it would cost them $50 to make it. You know, where I make my margin is by making it in volume, 1,000 at a time, 10,000 at a time, or whatnot. But some DIY projects, you know, like Jason was saying, I think it's kind of funny how they'll say, okay, yeah, it's $500. I can make it for 300. It only took me, you know, 18 hours of my time and, you know, $6,000 worth of equipment to do so. What's the value of your time? I think one of the big things that a lot of the DIY pages kind of seem to neglect is the duration of time that it took to build that project. You know, put that off what you would consider a fair labor rate based off of your skill and knowledge, $15-20 an hour, you know, calculate that into it, not to mention the amount of tools and equipment that you needed, or whether or not you utilized any scrap material that you just happen to have laying around your house. So I think the pricing is rather skewed. It kind of damages the DIY community in terms of, you know, whether I should build it or buy it. But like Jason was saying, it's a huge source for innovation. And I think in the years to come, we're going to see a lot of really cool products and projects come out of the DIY community.
I think Patrick's cramping our flow with the black shirt.
I just noticed that.
Thanks for joining us, Patrick.
Missed the memo.
Sorry, guys. I was like, you know what? I can actually break away and hop in on this. So stoked. Sorry to crash your guys' party.
Oh, all good. We're on question number 3. So we're talking about DIY projects in the home gym space. So, which is something that is definitely within the home gym culture. So let's just say you're talking with a DIY guy who's doing it on YouTube. One, I guess, what would be your general thoughts on that? And then what would be some advice to make sure that they are doing it the right way?
I mean, personally, I think the DIY stuff is really cool because it pretty much opens up design and building stuff to everybody. And, I'm going to think differently than Dylan is going to think, differently than Jason is going to think, differently than anybody is going to think in terms of the approach of how we're going to design and build something. So just being able to see other people's perspectives and draw inspiration from that. And I'm not saying copy, I'm just saying, oh, that's a cool idea. I didn't think about it like that. Maybe I can implement something similar. And, I've done that. And so I think that's really cool. And, regarding doing the right way to do something, I don't really know if there is a right way. Even through this journey, it was kind of like, all right, let's see if this works. Oh, nope, that doesn't work. And then you improve upon that. But I mean, obviously, if you're going to build something, be safe and all that kind of stuff. But regarding a right way, I don't think there's any sort of like textbook or something along those lines to say, hey, this is how stuff needs to be done.
Yeah, I think the aim at that question was there's been some controversial DIY projects where maybe you just kind of take a one-to-one replica of a product from somebody else and DIY that.
Oh, okay, I got you. Yeah, I mean, personally, I might not think that's cool in a sense, but I mean, I guess none of us can really stop people from doing that. And if other people out there think, oh, well, it's going to be cheaper to do this, because that's the primary argument. And I see it all the time in the comments. Oh, I can make that for this. But kind of piggybacking off of what Dylan said, yeah, you don't understand, like, the machine that we use to cut this costs X, and our time that we used in design and quality control, so on and so forth, to create a repeatable, high quality product. Like, there's costs involved in all of that doesn't just go with what the material costs to buy us. So, and I think too, at the end of the day, I think I can confidently say that any of us can make something better than somebody can DIY it. And eventually it'll break down, eventually it'll wear out. And then another popular thing I've heard on social media is buy once, cry once with certain things. So, hey, you buy this, it's going to last you forever, because most of the stuff that's built is, pretty industrial grade, and simply lifting weights to any capacity that any of us can lift or anybody can really lift isn't going to cause most of the commercialized products to break down as quickly as just something that's thrown together from materials from Home Depot or Lowe's or something along those lines.
Yeah, I think that was another good discussion. Anything else before we move on to the last one?
I've come to terms with the fact that the DIY community, they're not your customer. These are the type of people that go on Etsy and they find, a page that, shows you how to build all the furniture in your house out of pallets you find behind Kmart's, and they do it. They're not the guys that shop in IKEA. They're two different complete mindsets of people. And, the biggest thing always comes down to the fact that what's it going to cost you to build it? What's the value of your time, and what's it required to build it? And, what the best thing that has come out of the DIY community is, I'm reminded by a quote by Steve Jobs: simplicity is harder than complexity. It takes a lot of complex thought to make something so simple. And what the DIY community does very well and successfully is they'll take a complex product or problem and show you how to approach it with a real simple approach, using every common, workaday materials to build something, which for developers like myself and all of you gentlemen, it's important to pay attention to some of these things, because sometimes they'll show you how to make. I've seen it myself. I've seen people show me how to build products or different ways of approaching a scenario out of more commonplace materials than some things that, I spend 10 grand molding, so there's value in the desperation of having absolutely no money to go forward with building a product. Sometimes we can overcomplicate things by having a larger budget or, 10 years of product development experience. And the DIY community can expose that. So I think it keeps us humble.
A lot of the DIY mindset too, like where people go wrong is kind of like Steve mentioned earlier. A lot of people see a logo on a brand and then just think, oh, it's a huge company, so this isn't going to disrupt anything. But I do think what you guys did say was, in general, for the most part, it's not really worth most of your time to really fight too hard. They're typically not really your customers. But the biggest issue is when they do take a one-to-one product and just try and copy it completely. What you guys were saying, there's a place in the community for it. However, it can be done better at sometimes. And I think another thing mentioned was just like, if you're going to do it, it doesn't hurt to reach out to the company beforehand and just say, hey, what do you guys think of this? You know, something like that.
Let me just add to that, because I think what you just said is probably most important when you're talking about a product that's a one-off. I'll just go ahead and say it. The Havoc Triad, it's a very unique product. There are not many multi-grip dumbbells. And if you had, or if those guys had made a multi-grip dumbbell and not said, hey, we're going to copy the Havoc Triad, you know, it'd be a different scenario. If someone builds their own power rack, how many people make power racks? You know, it just becomes an iteration and not so much of a copy. So I think for those people wanting to DIY products that are very niche or boutique, I think you just need to be careful.
Well, like Patrick said,
Yeah.
buy once, cry once. I've learned just from experience that you end up spending more money in the long run, because just say you make something yourself, it's not going to perform most likely as good as the commercial version or whatever is developed by a company that put a lot more energy and focus into something like that. So like you said, the life cycle of those products are a lot less. So over time, you know, you might say, oh, I'm saving $30, but when then you later have to either make another one or purchase the product, then now that's money that you've just ate in order to try to save it initially.
It's important to think about the resale value too, right? Like if I were to save 30 or 40% by making something myself, at the end of the day, if I wanted to resell like any of your products, Craigslist, eBay, you know, Facebook Marketplace, I can get 50, 60 cents on the dollar after I purchase it, probably. I can't do that with my DIY project. So in terms of having an asset value afterwards, you kind of lost money by trying to save 30% by trying to save one, you know, so.
Oh, that's a great point, Dylan.
And what a surreal thing when you see one of your products on the used market. That just happened to me recently for like the first time. And I was like, holy shit.
I saw an AbMat at a garage sale about a month or two ago. It was a big perspective.
That's market saturation right there. That's good.
It was an old school one. I looked at the guy, I was like, did you know this thing's like 12 years old and they only had like 100 of these printed with this exact design? They're like, no. No.
Collector's edition, price went up.
As one of the 70 Duck Dynasty Mossy Oak AbMats.
Nice.
Oh, dude, that's killer.
That is cool.
If you want to do some sit-ups on your Bass Pro boat.
Hey, man, a lot of these fitness companies are having these like outdoor lines. It's like, you know,
yeah,
they have like an outdoor version of it. So I guess, you know, you might be on to something there, Dylan.
we got a free roll of material. That's the only reason I have them. I got 7 of them in a box in the back.
I like that. All right, let's move on to the last question. So we all know that the price of gym equipment is rising. It would be really great to hear from all of you as to why that is, just so like your average consumer can understand. I'm sure you see a lot of complaints these days as to why the prices are going up.
UPS, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg. Next question.
Nailed it.
No. The gym prices is going up. Really, the value of the dollar is going down. But from a fitness standpoint, materials. I think most of you guys make all of your products and source your materials in the U.S. Things are getting expensive. Raw materials changing by 10% affects finished products by 40 or 50%, and it's getting harder and harder to get things shipped to you. Shipping delays and demand for certain things have just everything's changed so dramatically in the last 2 years. Cardboard is up 30% from 3 years ago. Jason, you guys can talk about the metal industry. Last time I checked, aluminum was up like 40, 50, 60, 70%, and steel was up 300 up at its peak at one point in time. Gosh, Mike, that's got to affect you pretty hard too. I deal with foams, which is oil-based products. So, it's when Russia goes to war with Ukraine and gas reaches $5 or $6 a gallon, it affects foam prices dramatically. Blowing agents come out of Taiwan, which have been extraordinarily expensive to get and to mix in with foams. And the tooling that we use to make all of our aluminum molds comes from Ukraine. I haven't been able to get that for a little while. It's getting difficult out there for some products, but it's going to get worse. But luckily for us, we could control our manufacturing and our pipeline and make some changes and alter materials to be able to keep and maintain price points. And we've had, a healthy enough margin in our products because of some price changes that we've initiated 2 years back pre-pandemic to where we're able to keep the price points of our existing products the same. But you better believe it, when we are releasing new products now, we're basing it off of the modern day prices to get things, not what we're hoping it to return to 2 years from now, if that is the case. So I know companies that are pricing in additional margin just for the anticipation of things going up. We haven't been doing that, but we're aware of it.
I agree. And I think it's a lot of it's there's a shortage of supply and obviously an increase of demand, because when everything stopped, there's no reserve. So like even just this aluminum that material I got for the jacks, I ordered like 6 weeks ago and it still was late, so I think the challenge, especially with companies like us that are smaller, make more innovative products, tend to have less margins because they're more unique. And that's been the challenge for us, because we haven't increased our prices at all, but that's pretty much, we're at the edge of that where we're going to have to start bumping the price a bit, because you can only absorb so much of that loss before your business isn't really running very efficiently.
I know, like, for a fact that we make a lot of steel products, maybe not as much as racks. We make weight plates out of steel. Back in 2020, August, I think steel was like $440 a ton for a hot rolled coil. And then in 2021, in August, a year later, it was like almost $2,000 for the same roll. So, we did our best actually to not, we don't want to raise prices. I'm sure none of you guys want to raise prices. That's not like the game. I want more people to buy our stuff. Like our fractional plates, I think have been $39.99 for like 2 or 3 years. And I think cost has steadily risen. I feel like we're always trying to fight for pennies. I'm sure you guys are too. Like I can swap a coater and save 5 cents a plate, or I can swap a box material or make it thinner, or something like that. But the price increase is real. I guess you have to pass some on, because you just can't make it as affordable. Like our 2.5s, 5s, and 10s did really well at the beginning of the pandemic. And honestly, we lost probably 80-90% of sales on that, because like a lot of the overseas stuff came back. And like my prices were just high, like, and there's just no way to beat it when you're paying $2 and $3 a pound for metal. You have to make money on it or else you can't sell it. So, but I've seen that across the board of like, especially wait times, like Steve mentioned, like just ordering rubber bands for our previous version of the dumbbell plates used to take 2 weeks. It's taken 8 weeks for me to get them. So I've had to use other sources, pay more money for it. Coating companies have taken weeks and weeks longer. How they make our fractional plates out of pressed metal, they ran out of like remill powder. So they had to mix it with new powder, which just cost more money. I mean, it's kind of a mixed bag of that. And the supply and demand's really affected it. But we've done our best to try to save pennies and cut costs at our level to try to keep a valuable product for the customer as best we can.
There's a lot of people that don't understand exactly what the actions of some of these extraordinarily large companies have on some of us smaller companies. Like, for instance, this is a small change that happened for a large company that affected us dramatically. The iOS 14 update that Apple initiated, where you have to initiate your privacy settings for every single app that you go into, absolutely destroyed Facebook in terms of their ability to track, to sell ads and acquire customers, which drastically affected all of us or any of you that sell on Facebook or Instagram through advertisements. My cost to acquire a customer has gone up substantially since then. So a little privacy act that Apple puts into place screws over Facebook, which then affects us dramatically. These large shifts between UPS charging more to the smaller companies to be able to subsidize the larger companies affects us dramatically. A 30% price hike in shipping comes straight from our bottom line, because I don't know about you guys, but I absorb some of my shipping costs, about 20 to 30% of it straight out of the gate. If UPS is charging me 10, I'm charging 7, just because there's a limit based off of what you're able to charge for certain things. So there's some big changes out there that are happening that we have no control over, apart from the supply chain or raw material price increases or inflation that are affecting our bottom lines dramatically.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's made great points. One point that I don't think anyone's made is something that probably affects anyone who's got high skilled labor involved in their process. finding people who are able to make parts, form metal, run a laser, like Patrick said, we're working with $1 million fiber lasers that cut this stuff. And it takes a skilled operator to make sure that they're cutting it right. You may not know, but a 10/32 hole that's going to hold a screw for UHMW, if you don't have your laser set right, it's going to shape it in a cone. And so when you go to tap that, you're not going to have threads on the back end and your screw will pull right through. Well, if you make 600 parts that way, you are effed, okay? Because those will have already gone through forming and you'll never even know until you try to attach your UHMW and things like that. And that's just like something that a knowledgeable operator wouldn't let happen. But what I've seen from all the steel cutters really is that they're having trouble keeping skilled labor employed. It's costing them more and more to keep those employees employed. We tried to go in, I only have 2 employees right now. One's full-time. I pay $20 an hour starting out because I expect people to stick around and work to our level. Well, $20 an hour pay is not cheap. We're not going to bring in minimum wage employees because we don't want minimum wage going into our product. But in order to do that, we have to charge more. And so, Patrick, I don't know if that's affecting you or Steve, and the guys who supply your cut steel, but that's where I've seen it most is in my sheet steel. Tube steel, you can stick that in the machine. It pretty much does its own thing. But anytime you have to go and form and you need a tradesman, I've noticed that there is a longer delay or a higher cost of doing those things right now. And I think it's greatly because of the labor pool and the overall condition of the trades in America. And I won't go on some Mike Rowe rant, but my father's been building aircraft in a factory for 40 years. So I've been seeing it my whole life. And it's a sad state right now. People aren't being encouraged to go into the trades as a viable career. And we're really seeing that impact us now, especially as inflation increases and the dollar does, lower in value.
No, Jason, I think you're spot on, man. For years through, school and even I'm 32 years old. And so when we grew up, the thing was, hey, go to college, get a degree, and that's kind of like your road to success and doing things. I even remember in high school going to the vocational school and they're like, hey, you guys can choose to be a welder, you can choose to be a chef, you can choose to be a woodworker. And even me and my friends were like, who the hell wants to do this? This is stupid. Like, I'm going to college, and now I'm kind of looking back at that. And, some of the most successful people I know, like, own wood shops, own plumbing companies. And I mean, these dudes are multi-millionaires. And I was like, man, 15 years ago, I was laughing at that. And everybody else was. And then that's where this labor shortage is coming from. And also, like what Jason said, a lot of these positions are very skilled positions, and manufacturers, they're redlining right now. Like, a lot of them, they can't keep up with the work that's coming into them, and mostly because they have a shortage of that skilled labor. So the people they have to keep them, they have to pay them more. It's getting really competitive in that market between shops. It's a very small manufacturing world, especially here in, the Cincinnati, Ohio area. One of the biggest fitness equipment manufacturers is an hour away from us, and we share some of the same vendors and manufacturers. And even it's been costing me more because I'm not sure if many of you guys are familiar. We form our J hooks completely out of one piece. We don't weld on the cup on the backside. And that's just something that I wanted to do. I think it's a cleaner part. It's a stronger part. But I was talking with the guy who runs that operation, who helps us with our J hook, because they have that Haas machine that they can cut them. They can cut 3/8 with nitrogen. They have a very, very, very nice 12K watt Trump fiber laser that can cut that. Like, we can't cut that, at our primary shop, so they can do a better job at it. Then they have that Haas machine that taps all the holes because they make J hooks 5,000 pairs at a time for this other company. But and that's why they have that machinery and that capability. But I'm talking to them and they're like, hey, we have to charge you more because this is a more difficult part to make. It takes longer. And frankly, where the tolerance is that you want your products to be, like, it's difficult to hold. And there's a lot of reject parts. We had an entire run of J hooks because they do the lefts and the rights, and then those lefts fit about, I want to say, somewhere between like a 16th and an 1/8 looser than the rights. And so it's a very clear difference. And I took them back and I measured it with calipers, and I'm like, hey, this is out of tolerance per our print. And that cost them a ton of money. And then they came back and my J-hook price went up about 7%, like per J-hooks, which is a pretty big deal, because that's not factoring in the cost for the plastic. We use the transparent polycarbonate plastic, which is a petroleum-based product. You know, we all can feel the prices at the gas pump every day. And so that cost is going up. And not to mention, a lot of these big manufacturers, for the better part of 2 years, they stopped manufacturing some of the thicker gauge plastic. Like we use 3/8, and they were manufacturing the real thin stuff that grocery stores and all these other places are using for COVID barriers. And so that also is driving the cost up. I mean, there's so many just little things that most people don't see. They just see the price on the website, like, oh, this went up, or oh, the shipping price went up a little bit, this, that, and the other. And then they're kind of mad at us. You know, healthy margins make healthy companies, and we have to be profitable to continue creating products and to continue to prototype the products that we want to put out there for you guys. And not just that, but to honor our commitment. You know, when we say we have a lifetime warranty, like I'm expecting to be around for life so I can service that warranty, so I can help, you know, and be there for you as support moving forward. And that's also a big part of it. Like we can't cut our own throats just because you're uncomfortable with or people are upset about the price increase. I mean, we have to look at the big picture, and that's, you know, all these little details just quickly add up.
So none of you would say that prices are going to be going down anytime soon?
No, I doubt it.
Not back to where they were.
No, yeah, no, dude, I look at some of my old purchase orders from 2019 and it literally makes me want to cry. I'm like, oh my gosh, if I would have known, like I would have just found a bunch of capital and bought an unreal amount of glory. But it is what it is.
You hear these stories about with, you know, your grandfather. I used to fill up my car for a nickel. You know, no one ever expects that to ever happen. You know,
Yeah.
Prices change over time. It's just the prices change very quickly over a very short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Not going back down. The question is, are they going to keep going up?
I'm assuming I'm probably the oldest guy on this podcast now. And I do remember when gas was less than $1 when I was in high school. So that was
89 cents is the lowest.
Yeah.
An
Filling
AMP.
up my Bronco with that big V8. I felt so good about
Oh man.
it.
So the real
but
question is anybody here jumping on that EV train?
I just bought the wife a hybrid. That was our first.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Halfway there.
Yeah, it's got a V6 gas motor. It has 2 electric motors. It gets 31 miles per gallon. That was a pretty good introduction into the whole EV thing.
There you go.
Still not totally confident in batteries, 100%.
Missed the tail end of that. Sorry.
That's all right. Does anybody else have anything else to add?
I think this is probably a good place for me to drop that we are going to have one more price increase on the UPS, and we're trying to future price it so that we don't have to have any more increases. You know, since we came out with a product in the midst of all these price raises and like trying to gauge where the price is going to be, I think Patrick brought up a great point. We can't slit our own throat. And for a long time, this was a hobby business. And now, you know, I have people who are relying on me for a job and things like that. And to ensure that we're going to be around for a long time to back up our lifetime guarantee, the price is going to have to go up just a little bit. And it's my commitment to make our product of the value that the price is portraying. And we intend to do that. While I hate to raise the price, I want everyone to know that they're going to be getting their money's worth still. And we'll ensure that.
Awesome. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to be here. I think you guys gave a lot of really great insights into what the consumer does not see. So it was great to just hear a lot of that stuff straight from your mouths. So yeah, thanks again for taking the time, and let's do it again.
Appreciate it, Jake.
Thank you.
Thanks for organizing this, Jake.
Yeah, and thank you guys for allowing me to hop in late. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
With
no
your
problem.
yellow shirt.
You're welcome, Patrick.
Yeah, next time let me know everybody's wearing black, man. Gee.
We didn't know until we hopped on, actually.